I am 28 years old, and my wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It was a beautiful ceremony. The sun was shining. My dress felt like a cloud. My husband, Mark, looked at me with so much love in his eyes. Or so I thought. We stood at the reception, holding hands, ready to greet our guests and celebrate the start of our new life together. My heart was full. We had spent over a year planning this day. I had poured so much of my own savings into it, wanting everything to be perfect. Mark had contributed too, but the bulk of the funds for the venue, the caterer, and especially our dream honeymoon to Italy came from a special account I had been building since I got my first job. We were just about to make our way to the dance floor for our first dance. The music was soft, a song we both loved. People were smiling, their faces warm and happy for us. Then, the doors to the reception hall burst open. It was Leo, Mark's younger brother. He looked disheveled. His tie was loose and his eyes were wild. He stumbled into the room and a hush fell over the guests. My smile froze on my face. Mark's hand tightened around mine. I could feel a sudden tension in his body. Leo pointed a shaky finger at Mark. His voice was loud, slurring slightly, but clear enough for everyone in that silent room to hear. "There you are," he shouted. "You think you can just get married and run off?" My mother-in-law, Carol, rushed toward him, her face a mask of horror. "Leo, not now. Please. Not here," she whispered frantically, trying to grab his arm. He shook her off. He kept his eyes locked on Mark, on us. "He owes me," Leo announced to the entire room. "He owes me the honeymoon funds. That money is mine." The air was sucked out of the room. Every eye was on us. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes burning into my skin. Guests were whispering to each other, their faces a mixture of shock and pity. My own parents looked utterly bewildered from across the room. I turned to Mark, expecting him to be angry, to defend us, to tell his brother to get out. But he just stood there. His face was pale, completely white. He looked not at Leo, but at the floor, like a child caught doing something wrong. In that moment, a cold dread started to creep into my heart. Far colder than the embarrassment. He was not surprised. He was cornered. Carol and Mark's father, David, were now both trying to handle Leo. They were speaking to him in low, urgent tones, attempting to steer him out of the hall. But Leo was loud and insistent. "He promised me," he kept saying, his voice echoing in the grand, silent space. "We had a deal. That money was for me, to fix things." I looked at Mark again, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mark?" I whispered. "What is he talking about? What money?" Mark finally looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes. There was only fear. "Chloe, I am so sorry," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "It's a misunderstanding. He's just drunk. Let my parents handle him." It was not a misunderstanding. I knew it in my gut. The way he refused to meet my gaze for more than a second. The way his hand felt clammy and weak in mine. He was lying. On our wedding day, in front of everyone we knew, a devastating secret was being hinted at. And my new husband was already lying to me. The perfect day, the perfect love I believed in, all of it shattered in that one ugly moment. The joy I had felt just minutes before was gone, replaced by a deep, sickening unease. I stood there in my beautiful white dress, feeling like a fool. The band, unsure of what to do, had stopped playing entirely. The silence was thick with tension. My maid of honor, Sarah, hurried to my side. "Chloe, are you okay?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. I couldn't answer. I just stared at the scene unfolding before me. David had finally managed to get a firm grip on Leo's arm and was half dragging, half guiding him toward a side exit. Carol followed them, her face buried in her hands. She did not once look back at me or her other son. Her priority was clear. It was managing the damage Leo caused, not comforting the bride he had just humiliated. Mark let go of my hand. "I need to go help them," he said, his voice strained. "I will be right back. We can fix this. He started to walk away to follow his family. He was leaving me alone in the middle of the room, the subject of everyone's pity and speculation. A wave of anger, sharp and hot, cut through my shock. I grabbed his arm. "No," I said, my voice low but firm. "You are not leaving me here. You are going to look at me and you are going to tell me what is going on." He flinched. "Not now, Chloe. Please," he begged. "Look at everyone. We can talk about this later. Let's just try to get through this." "Get through what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Our wedding? The one your brother just announced was funded by money you apparently stole from our honeymoon?" "I didn't steal it," he hissed, glancing around nervously. "It's complicated. Please just trust me for a little while longer." Trust him. The words felt like a slap. He was asking for trust after his brother had just accused him of something so specific, so damaging, and his only response was to look guilty and run away. The foundation of our entire relationship felt like it was cracking right under my feet. The trust was already gone. A waiter approached me then. He was a young man, probably a college student working for the catering company. He moved with a quiet efficiency that seemed out of place in the middle of all the drama. He leaned in close as if he were offering me a drink. "Ma'am," he said, his voice so low only I could hear it. "I think this is for you." He discreetly pressed a small, folded piece of paper into my hand. It was a napkin. I looked at him, confused. He gave me a quick, almost imperceptible nod and then moved away, disappearing back into the staff areas. My fingers closed around the napkin. Mark was still trying to pull his arm free, his focus on his departing family. He hadn't noticed the exchange. I let go of him. "Go," I said, my voice suddenly cold and devoid of emotion. "Go help your family." He looked relieved. "Thank you, Chloe. I will sort this out. I promise." He hurried off without another look back. I stood alone for a moment, the weight of 100 stares on me. Sarah put her arm around my shoulders. "What do we do?" she asked softly. I did not answer her. I opened my hand and looked at the folded napkin. My fingers were trembling as I carefully unfolded it. Written in simple block letters was a short, cryptic message. It did not explain everything, but it was a start. It was a weapon. The note said, "Don't believe him. Ask about the lake house deposit." I, 28F, had just married Mark, 30M. Or at least I had just gone through the ceremony. We hadn't signed the license yet. That was scheduled for after the reception, a small detail that suddenly felt monumental. My dream wedding had turned into a public spectacle of humiliation, all thanks to my new brother-in-law, Leo. His accusation that Mark owed him our honeymoon money hung in the air, thick and poisonous. The immediate shock was now hardening into a cold, sharp anger. I had saved for years for that honeymoon. It wasn't just a trip. It was a symbol of our future, of the life we were building together. The idea that Mark would give that money away, without my knowledge, felt like a profound betrayal. The note in my hand felt heavy, important. Lake house deposit. The words meant nothing to me. I had never heard Mark or his family talk about a lake house. We didn't own one. They didn't own one. It was a complete mystery, but the first part of the note was a clear instruction. Don't believe him. It confirmed the sick feeling in my stomach. Mark was lying. This was not a simple misunderstanding created by a drunk brother. This was something bigger. Sarah read the note over my shoulder. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "Lake house deposit?" "I have no idea," I said, folding the napkin carefully and tucking it into the small purse I had left at our table. "But I am going to find out." My mind was racing. The initial hurt was being replaced by a strange, chilling clarity. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed the truth. Not the placating lies Mark was trying to sell me. The party was essentially over. Though some guests lingered, talking in hushed groups, the celebratory atmosphere was gone. My parents came over, their faces etched with worry. "Chloe, honey, what was that all about?" My mom asked, taking my hand. "Is everything all right?" I forced a smile that felt brittle and fake. "Everything is fine, Mom. Leo just had a little too much to drink. Mark and his parents are handling it." I hated lying to them, but I couldn't possibly explain a situation I didn't understand myself. I needed to protect them from the mess until I knew what the mess was. My dad looked skeptical. "That didn't sound like just drinking, Chloe. He was talking about money. Your money." "I know," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "And I am going to get to the bottom of it. Please, just try to enjoy the rest of the evening. I need to go find Mark." They reluctantly agreed, though I could see the worry remained in their eyes. I felt a surge of gratitude for them, for their straightforward love and concern, which stood in such stark contrast to the drama and deception of Mark's family. Sarah followed me as I made my way toward the side room where Mark and his family had disappeared. "What's your plan?" she asked. "I'm going to ask him," I said simply. "First about the money, then about the lake house." "Do you think he'll tell you the truth?" "No," I admitted, "but his reaction will." The door to the private room was slightly ajar. I could hear voices inside. Carol was crying. Leo was shouting again, his words thick and angry. David was trying to be the voice of reason, but he sounded stressed. And Mark? Mark was trying to placate everyone. "Leo, just calm down. Shouting isn't going to solve anything," Mark was saying. "Solve what? You solving it?" "You were supposed to have the rest of it for me today," Leo retorted. "That was the whole plan." My blood ran cold. The whole plan. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. This was planned. Leo was meant to confront him. But why? Why at our wedding? I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The four of them fell silent and turned to look at me. Carol was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Leo was red-faced and defiant. David looked exhausted. And Mark looked like a deer in headlights. "Chloe," Mark said, taking a step toward me. "I told you I would handle this." "I'm sure you did," I said, my voice icy. I just heard Leo say this was all part of a plan. "What plan, Mark? A plan to ruin our wedding?" "No, of course not," Mark said quickly. "He doesn't know what he's saying." Leo scoffed. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying. You promised me you'd get me the money after the wedding gifts were opened. You said she wouldn't notice it was gone for a few weeks." I stared at Mark, my heart feeling like a stone in my chest. So that was it. They were going to wait until we received cash gifts from our guests, and then Mark was going to skim from them, along with our honeymoon fund, to give to Leo. He was planning to steal from our guests. He was planning to steal from me. "Is that true, Mark?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension in the room. Mark's face crumpled. He couldn't look at me. "It's not that simple, Chloe." "It sounds very simple to me," I replied, my gaze shifting to Leo. "You need money, and my husband planned to give you ours. The question is, why?" "It's none of your business," Leo snapped, crossing his arms. "Your brother just made it my business in front of 200 people, I shot back. "So I suggest you start talking. Why does Mark owe you our honeymoon money?" "I don't owe him anything," Mark finally protested, finding a sliver of courage. "I was helping you, Leo. I was trying to clean up your mess again." "My mess?" "You were a part of it," Leo yelled. "Enough." David's voice boomed, silencing both his sons. He looked at me, his expression weary. "Chloe, this is a private family matter. It should have been handled privately. I am deeply sorry for the scene Leo caused." "I appreciate the apology, David," I said, not backing down. "But it's a little late for privacy. Your son accused my husband of owing him money I saved. So either Leo is a liar and a malicious person who wanted to destroy our wedding for no reason, or he's telling the truth. Which is it?" Carol started sobbing again. "He's just troubled," she wailed, looking at Leo with pity. "He makes mistakes. We have to help him." This was the family dynamic I had always disliked. Leo, the prodigal son, could do no wrong that couldn't be fixed by the rest of the family, primarily Mark. Mark was the responsible one, the fixer, and I was now seeing the true cost of that role. It was costing him his integrity. It was costing us our future. I decided to use the information from the note. I kept my eyes on Mark, watching him closely. "Mark," I said, my tone changing, becoming more direct. "What is the lake house deposit?" The reaction was instantaneous and profound. Mark's head snapped up. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking ghostly pale under the fluorescent lights of the small room. David and Leo also froze. They exchanged a rapid, panicked look. Carol stopped crying and just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I had hit a nerve. A very big one. Mark swallowed hard. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. His eyes darted around the room, anywhere but at me. "Don't you?" I pressed, taking a step closer. "It's a simple question. What is the lake house deposit? It sounds like a financial term, something you, as an accountant for your father's company, might know about." "It's nothing," David said quickly, stepping in front of Mark as if to shield him. "It's an old project. It has nothing to do with this." "It seems to," I said calmly, because everyone in this room just reacted like I'd thrown a grenade. So I'm going to ask again. What is it? Leo let out a bitter laugh. "You really don't know, do you? He really didn't tell you anything." He looked at Mark with contempt. "Some husband you are." "Shut up, Leo," Mark hissed, his voice trembling. I knew then that I wouldn't get the truth from them. Not here. Not now. They would close ranks. They would lie and deflect and protect each other just as they had always done. But I had what I needed. Their panic was a confession. The lake house deposit was the key to this whole ugly secret, and I was going to find out what it was. I turned and walked out of the room without another word. I left them in their shocked silence. Sarah was waiting for me just outside the door. "Oh my God, Chloe. What happened?" "They're lying," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and adrenaline. "All of them. Mark, his brother, his parents. They are all in on it." "What is it?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said, my jaw tightening. "But it has something to do with a lake house, and I am going to tear their whole world apart to find out what it is." The bride they thought was a pushover. The woman they planned to steal from was gone. Someone else was standing in her place, someone they had not counted on. The rest of the reception was a blur. I moved through it like a ghost in a white dress. Sarah and my parents formed a protective barrier around me, fielding questions from concerned guests with vague, polite answers. People started to leave. The band packed up their instruments. The catering staff began clearing the tables. The beautiful, expensive party I had planned was dying an undignified death. Mark eventually emerged from the side room, his face drawn and pale. He tried to approach me to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice low and sharp. He flinched as if I had struck him. "Chloe, please, let's go home. We can talk this through. I can explain." "Explain what? The lies? Or the plan to steal from me?" I asked. "Which part were you going to explain first?" "It wasn't like that," he insisted, his voice cracking. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Then make me understand," I challenged. "Tell me about the lake house deposit." He froze again, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. He looked helpless, trapped. It was pathetic. "That's what I thought," I said, turning my back on him. "I'm not going home with you, Mark. I'm going to a hotel with Sarah. I need some space." "A hotel? On our wedding night?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think this is still our wedding night? You think after what happened here, I'm going to just go home and pretend this is normal? You are more delusional than I thought. His parents came out of the room then. Carol's eyes were red and puffy. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and resentment. "Chloe, dear," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "Families have disagreements. Leo is volatile. Don't let him ruin this beautiful day for you and Mark." "He didn't ruin it, Carol," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "He just exposed what was already broken." Her fake smile faltered. Her expression hardened. "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," I said. I had no energy left for this charade. I turned to Sarah. "Let's go." We collected my overnight bag from the bridal suite. I didn't even look at the wedding gifts piled on a table, the gifts Mark and Leo had planned to raid. The sight of them made me sick. As we walked out of the venue, I saw him standing there, watching me leave. My husband. He looked lost and broken. I felt a pang of something, a ghost of the love I had for him just hours before. But it was quickly consumed by the cold fire of betrayal. I did not look back. At the hotel, Sarah ordered room service while I changed out of my wedding dress. Taking it off felt symbolic, like shedding a costume. I folded it carefully, not out of sentiment, but because it was expensive and I intended to sell it. Every penny I could recoup from this disaster, I would. I sat on the edge of the bed in a hotel robe, the folded napkin with the note on the bedside table. It was my only clue. "So, what's the next move?" Sarah asked, sitting beside me with a container of French fries. "I need more information," I said, picking at a fry without any real appetite. "They're not going to tell me anything willingly. They'll just keep lying and closing ranks. So we need to find out what this lake house deposit is on our own," she concluded. "Exactly. But how?" I felt a wave of helplessness. I was just a graphic designer. Mark and his father were in finance. Their world was one of numbers and ledgers I didn't understand. Sarah chewed on a fry thoughtfully. "Mark is an accountant at his dad's company, right? David Miller and Sons Accounting?" "Yes," I said. "He's a partner now, actually. He was so proud of it." The memory felt sour. "And Leo?" "Leo floats," I said. "He's officially a consultant for the firm, which is a fancy title for someone who comes and goes as he pleases and gets a paycheck. He's always chasing some get-rich-quick scheme. Real estate, crypto, startups. They always fail, and Mark and his dad always bail him out." "Okay," Sarah said, her eyes lighting up with an idea. "So the problem, whatever it is likely rooted in the company's finances. Leo screws up, needs money. David and Mark cover it up using the company. This lake house deposit must be how they hid the transaction." "That makes sense," I agreed. "But how do we prove it? Their books are a fortress." "Maybe not," Sarah said, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Mark is notoriously careless with his digital security. He uses the same password for everything. And he's always logged into everything on his laptop." A spark of hope ignited in me. "His laptop. It's at our apartment. And he's probably at his parents' house right now trying to figure out how to spin this," she said. "He won't be home. We could go over there. Right now." It felt risky, devious, but what other choice did I have? They had lied to me, planned to steal from me, and humiliated me. Playing by the rules was no longer an option. "Let's do it," I said, a new sense of determination solidifying in my chest. We took a taxi to the apartment I was supposed to be sharing with my new husband. The place was dark and silent. My heart pounded as I used my key to unlock the door. It felt like breaking and entering, even though it was my home. Or it was supposed to be. The apartment was exactly as we had left it that morning, filled with the pre-wedding chaos of clothes and makeup. And there, on the desk in the small office nook, was Mark's laptop. It was open, The screen was dark, but it was asleep, not shut down. Bingo, Sarah whispered. I sat down in the desk chair, my hands hovering over the keyboard. This felt like a massive violation of privacy. But then I remembered Leo's voice, echoing in the reception hall. I remembered the look of guilt on Mark's face. My hesitation vanished. I pressed the space bar. The screen flickered to life. And just as Sarah had predicted, he was logged in. His email inbox was open. His personal email. My eyes scanned the list of messages. And then I saw it. A subject line from 6 months ago that made my breath catch in my throat. The email was from Leo. The subject was, urgent, the lake house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on it. It was not just one email. It was a long chain, a conversation between Leo, Mark, and their father, David. I started at the beginning, and as I read, the full scope of their deception, their betrayal, unfurled before my eyes. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. The first email was from a frantic Leo. The deal fell through. It read, the land isn't zoned for commercial development. The guy who sold it to me disappeared. All the money is gone. All of it. Dad, you have to help me. I took it from the quarterly tax reserve account. If the partners find out, I'm finished. We're all finished. My stomach churned. He had stolen from the company, not just from the family, but from client funds or operating capital meant for taxes. This was serious. This was fraud. David's reply was curt and furious. You did what? How much did you take, Leo? How could you be so stupid? Leo's response was a single number. It was a staggering amount. 6 figures. Enough to cripple the business if it came to light. Enough to send someone to jail. Then came Mark's entry into the conversation. The man I was supposed to love. The responsible one. Dad, calm down. Panicking won't help. His email began. We can fix this. We have to. We can't let this get out. It would destroy the family name. He didn't say it would be wrong. He didn't say Leo needed to face the consequences. He said they had to hide it. Over the next series of emails, they hatched their plan. My future husband, the man I thought was so honorable, was the architect of the cover-up. It was his idea. We'll need to create a false expense to balance the books before the end of the quarter, Mark wrote. We can't just say the money vanished. We'll create a ghost asset. A fake investment. Let's call it a deposit on a property. Something that looks legitimate but is hard to trace. A lake house deposit. My heart stopped. There it was. The lie, spelled out in black and white. It was the name for their fraud. David agreed to the plan. He instructed Mark on how to bury it in the accounts, how to create a paper trail of fake invoices and purchase agreements for a property that didn't exist. They were creating a fiction to hide a crime. But there was a problem. Even with the fraudulent accounting, they were still short on actual cash to meet their immediate obligations. The money Leo had stolen was gone, but the bills it was supposed to pay were still due. They had plugged some holes with emergency funds, but they were still on the brink. And that's when my name appeared in the email chain. It was in an email from Mark to his father. I have an idea of how to manage the short-term cash flow problem, he wrote. Chloe just transferred a large sum into our joint wedding account. She thinks it's for the final venue payments and the honeymoon. I can use a portion of that to cover the immediate gap. She won't know. I'll tell her the wedding costs were slightly higher than expected. By the time she even thinks to check the honeymoon fund balance, the wedding will be over, we'll have gift money, and I can replace it. She'll never have to know anything about Leo's situation. It's better this way. It protects her from the stress. I felt the air leave my lungs. I had to grip the desk to keep from falling. It wasn't just that he had used my money. It was the calculated, cold-blooded way he had planned it. The way he had rationalized it. Painting himself as my protector while he was actively stealing from me. He had looked me in the eye, talked about our future, our honeymoon, all while knowing he was siphoning off the funds I had worked so hard for, to clean up his brother's criminal mess. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. Chloe? she said gently. I must have made a sound. I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the screen. She leaned in and read the email. Her gasp was sharp in the silent room. Oh my God, Chloe, she whispered. He didn't. He did, I finally managed to say, my voice a hoarse whisper. He did. And that's not even the worst part. I scrolled down to the final emails, the ones from the last few days. Leo was panicking again. The cover-up wasn't holding as well as they had hoped. One of the firm's other partners was starting to ask questions about the lake house investment, wanting to see progress reports. They needed another injection of cash to make a fake progress payment and buy more time. And that's where the wedding day plan came from. It was Leo's idea, a desperate, cruel gambit. Mark, you have to get me the rest of the money, he wrote. 'Cause a scene at the wedding. Tell everyone you owe me. Put the pressure on. She'll be so humiliated she'll push you to pay me just to make it go away. And we can use the gift money. It's the only way. And Mark's reply? The final nail in the coffin of the man I thought I knew? Fine, he wrote. Do it. He had agreed. He had consented to his brother ambushing me at our wedding, to humiliating me in front of my friends and family, all as part of a twisted plan to manipulate me into funding their cover-up. The love I felt for him curdled into something dark and ugly. It was hate. Pure, undiluted hate. I'm going to destroy them, I said, my voice quiet but filled with a terrifying calm. Not just Mark, all of them. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath, my mind clear and sharp. The shock and hurt were gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I began to forward the entire email chain to my own personal email address. Then I sent a copy to Sarah's. Then I saved them to a USB drive I found in a desk drawer. First, I said, clicking send and watching the progress bar fill up. I secure the evidence. I stood up from the desk. The plan was already forming in my mind, clear and precise. They had wanted to make me a pawn in their sordid little family drama. They had underestimated me. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They thought they could make me small, make me a victim. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The night was long. I didn't sleep. Sarah dozed on and off in the other bed, but my mind was a whirlwind of activity. I replayed the emails in my head, each word a fresh stab of betrayal. Mark's casual deception, David's complicity, Carol's willful blindness, and Leo's selfish, destructive nature. They were a family unit built on lies, with Mark as the designated cleaner of messes, no matter the moral cost. And I was supposed to be the newest financial resource to prop up their rotten structure. The anger didn't fade. It refined itself, sharpening into a tool. By dawn, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't going to be a quiet annulment. This wasn't going to be me just taking my money and walking away. They had chosen to humiliate me publicly. I was going to return the favor. They had made this about money and appearances. I would use both to exact my revenge. I sent a text message. It was a group text to Mark, Carol, and David. Leo was not included. He was just a symptom. The disease was the three of them. We need to talk, I wrote. All of you. Meet me back at the wedding venue, in the private dining room where we spoke yesterday. Be there at noon. And Mark, do not come alone. The replies came almost instantly. Mark. Chloe, thank God. Of course I'll be there. We can fix this, I know we can. Carol. Yes, dear. A calm discussion is what we all need. I'm so glad you're being sensible. David. We will be there. Sensible. They thought I had cooled off. They thought I was coming back to the table to negotiate, to be placated, to be a good, forgiving wife. They had no idea what was coming. Sarah woke up as I was getting dressed. I wasn't putting on anything special, just a simple pair of black trousers and a plain blouse. It felt like armor. What's the plan, General? She asked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. The final confrontation, I said. I'm going to lay it all out, and I'm going to give them my terms. Do you want me to come with you? She asked, already starting to get out of bed. I shook my head. No, I need you to be my backup. I've sent you the emails. If you don't hear from me by 1 o'clock, with a specific code word, I want you to send that email chain to a list of people I'm about to give you. I quickly wrote down a list. It included the other 2 senior partners at David's accounting firm. It included a cousin of David's who was a notorious gossip in their social circle. And for good measure, I added the email address for the local state board of accountancy. Chloe, this is nuclear, Sarah said, looking at the list. They set the terms of engagement when they planned to humiliate me at my own wedding, I replied. I'm just choosing the battlefield. I needed to find one more person. The waiter, Ben. He was the one who had slipped me the note. He had taken a risk to help me. I didn't know why, but I felt I owed him a thank you, and perhaps he could provide one final piece of context. I called the catering company, explaining that I was the bride from the disastrous wedding the day before. I asked if I could speak to one of their staff members, Ben. The manager was hesitant at first, citing privacy, but I was persuasive. I explained I wanted to thank him for his professionalism during a difficult situation. Eventually, he was put on the phone. Hello? He said, his voice wary. Ben? This is Chloe, the bride from yesterday, I said. There was a pause. Oh, hi. Is everything okay? Not really, I said honestly. But I wanted to thank you. Your note? It was the key. It broke everything open. Why did you help me? He was quiet for a moment. I used to work for David Miller's firm, he said finally. I was a junior bookkeeper. I saw how they operated. I saw how they treated Mark, always making him clean up Leo's messes. And I saw Leo. He's reckless. A few years ago, he got into a similar situation, and to cover for him, David fired a senior accountant, a good man, and blamed the discrepancy on him. Ruined his career. I quit not long after. When I saw Leo making that scene, I knew it was happening again. And I saw your face. You looked like you had no idea. I felt like someone should give you a fighting chance. His story solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about me. It was about a pattern of behavior that harmed everyone around them. They used and discarded people to protect their perfect family image. You did more than that, I told him, my voice thick with emotion. You gave me the truth. Thank you, Ben. Truly. Good luck, he said, and hung up. I arrived at the venue a few minutes before noon. The large reception hall was empty now. Stripped of all the flowers and decorations, it looked sad and hollow. The manager led me to the same small dining room as yesterday. I sat at the head of the table and waited. They arrived together, a united front. Mark, Carol, and David. They all had strained expressions, but they were trying to project an air of calm control. Mark was holding a small bouquet of roses, which looked ridiculous and pathetic. Chloe, he said, holding them out to me. I am so sorry for everything. I ignored the flowers. I didn't even look at them. I just gestured to the chairs. Sit down. He placed the roses awkwardly on the table, and they all sat. They looked at me expectantly, like a panel of judges. I'm glad you all came, I began, my voice even and steady. I had practiced this in my head 100 times. It saves me the trouble of having to repeat myself. I know you're all expecting a tearful conversation where we discuss feelings and work through this. That is not what is going to happen. Their polite masks flickered. Confusion started to creep in. Instead, I am going to tell you what I know, I continued. And then I am going to tell you what you are going to do. I started with Leo. I know that Leo stole a 6-figure sum from the company's tax reserve account to fund a failed real estate deal. David's face went rigid. Carol gasped and put a hand to her chest. Mark stared at me, his eyes wide with shock. I know, I went on, my gaze moving from one to the next. That you, David, and you, Mark, decided to cover it up instead of reporting him. I know that you, Mark, invented a fraudulent transaction to hide the theft. You called it the Lake House deposit. The blood drained from Mark's face. He looked like he was going to be sick. David looked furious, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of the table. I know that in order to cover the immediate cash shortfall, you, Mark, decided to use my money. The money I had saved for our wedding and our honeymoon. You called it protecting me from the stress. My voice dripped with sarcasm. Carol started to speak. Now, Chloe, I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm not finished. I snapped, and she fell silent. And finally, I know that when you needed more money to continue the cover-up, you all agreed to a plan. A plan where Leo would crash our wedding and publicly humiliate me to pressure me into giving you more money from our wedding gifts. You, Mark, personally approved this plan. Your exact words were, "Fine, do it." A dead silence fell over the room. It was absolute. I had laid all their cards on the table. There was no more room for lies, no more space for deception. I had them. Mark was the first to break. He let out a choked sob. Chloe, how could you know that? I gave him a cold smile. You're careless with your laptop, Mark. And you underestimated me. You all did. I let that sink in for a moment. I watched the realization dawn on their faces. They weren't in control anymore. I was. Now, I said, leaning forward, here is what is going to happen. This is not a negotiation. These are my terms. I looked directly at David. Term number 1, the money. You are going to transfer every single penny I contributed to the wedding into my personal bank account. That includes the venue, the caterer, the flowers, the band, and the full honeymoon fund. I have the receipts. The total is $112,000. You are also going to add another $25,000 for the emotional distress and public humiliation you all put me through. David spluttered. That's outrageous. We can't just... You can, I interrupted calmly. Or I can forward the email chain I have to your other partners and the State Board of Accountancy. I wonder how they'll feel about the Lake House deposit. Your choice. He paled, his mouth snapping shut. He knew I had him. Term number 2, I continued, my eyes shifting to Carol. Her face was a mess of tears and fury. You will never contact me again. None of you. Not by phone, not by email, not through friends. If I see any of you, I will file a restraining order. We are finished. Is that clear? She just sobbed, nodding her head mutely. Finally, I looked at Mark. He was looking at me with desperation, his eyes pleading. Chloe, please, he whispered. Don't do this. I love you. We can get past this. I can fix it. This is where my voice becomes present, immediate. The memory is so sharp it feels like it's happening right now. I look at him, at this man I thought I would spend my life with. The love I felt is a distant echo. In its place is a cold, hard certainty. Fix it? I ask, and my voice is flat. You can't fix this, Mark. You are the one who is broken. You talk about love, but you conspired to steal from me. You chose them. You chose this family, this rotten, broken system, over me, over us. I was trying to hold everything together, he cries. I didn't want to lose my family. And I didn't want to lose you. You don't get to have both, I tell him. You don't get to have a family built on lies and a wife you are honest with. You had to choose, and you chose them, every single time. You chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose to humiliate me. Those were your choices, not mine. He puts his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. What do you want from me, Chloe? I'll do anything. I want you to understand something, I say, leaning closer. This isn't about us working through a problem. This is about consequences. You all treated me like an inconvenience, like a bank account to be used and discarded. You thought I was weak. You thought I would cry and forgive and forget. You were wrong. I stand up. The meeting is over. The money, $137,000. It will be in my account by 5 o'clock today. If it is not, Sarah knows what to do. The marriage license, by the way, was never signed. So legally, you are nothing to me. Goodbye, Mark. I turn and walk toward the door. Chloe, wait. He calls out, his voice desperate. Don't I get a say in this? I stop at the door and look back at him, at all three of them, their faces a portrait of shock and defeat. No, I say. You don't. You used up all your chances to have a say when you decided my feelings, my money, and my dignity were less important than your family's secrets. And with that, I walk out of the room, leaving them in the ruins of the world they had built. I don't look back. I walk out of the venue, into the bright afternoon sun, and for the first time in 24 hours, I feel like I can breathe again. The walk away from the venue felt like walking out of a prison. The air outside was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere in that small room. I didn't run. I walked with a deliberate, steady pace. Each step felt like it was putting more distance between me and the toxic mess of the Miller family. My phone was silent in my pocket. I had said my piece. The ball was in their court now. I went to a small cafe a few blocks away, ordered a coffee I didn't really want, and sat by the window. I needed a moment to decompress, to let the adrenaline recede. The confrontation had been draining, but also incredibly empowering. For my entire relationship with Mark, I had tiptoed around his family's dynamics. I had politely ignored Carol's backhanded compliments, David's dismissive attitude, and the constant, low-grade drama surrounding Leo. I had done it because I loved Mark, and I thought that's what you did. You accepted the package deal. I realized now that I hadn't been accepting it. I had been enabling it. My silence had been mistaken for weakness. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Code word? I smiled. Freedom, I typed back. Her reply was instant. Yes, so it's done? How did it go? Are you okay? It's done, I texted. I'll tell you everything later. Now we wait. The waiting was the hardest part. The minutes ticked by. I watched people walking past the cafe, living their normal lives, oblivious to the high-stakes drama that had just consumed mine. For a moment, I envied them. Then I remembered the alternative, being married to Mark, slowly having my finances and my spirit drained by his family's endless needs, always wondering what new lie was just around the corner. No, this was better. This pain was clean. It was the pain of surgery, of cutting out a sickness. At 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. It was a wire transfer. Not from David or Mark, but from Miller & Sons Accounting. The amount was exactly $137,000. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my breath caught in my throat. They had done it. David, terrified of his firm being exposed, had caved. He hadn't even waited until the 5 o'clock deadline. The money was there. My money, plus the $25,000 in damages I had demanded on a bluff. I had not only gotten my life back, I had gotten paid for my trouble. A wave of relief so profound it almost made me dizzy washed over me. I let out a shaky breath. It was real. It was over. I had won. I took a screenshot of the transfer confirmation and sent it to Sarah. Her response was a string of celebratory emojis. The next few hours were a whirlwind of logistics. I called my parents and told them the wedding was officially off. I didn't give them all the sordid details, not yet. I just said that I had discovered Mark had been fundamentally dishonest with me about finances and his family, and that the marriage could not proceed. They were shocked and saddened, but their primary concern was for me. Are you safe? Are you okay? My dad asked, his voice tight with worry. I'm more than okay, Dad, I told him, and for the first time, I truly meant it. I'm free. My mom, ever practical, asked, what about the gifts? The house? I'll handle it, I assured her. Don't worry about a thing. Handling it was my next project. I hired a company that specializes in wedding cancellations. They would contact all the vendors, handle the return of any deposits possible, and manage the logistical nightmare. I then composed a short, simple email to all our wedding guests. Dear friends and family, it read, due to unforeseen circumstances, the marriage of Chloe and Mark will not be moving forward. We are profoundly grateful for your love and support. For those who gave gifts, we will be making arrangements for their return in the coming weeks. We ask for your understanding and privacy during this difficult time. I made sure to send it from my email address alone. I wanted to make it clear that this was my decision, that I was the one taking control of the narrative. That evening, Sarah and I went back to the apartment to pack my things. It was strange being there. The place no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage set for a life I was never going to live. Mark's things were everywhere, and each item felt tainted. I worked methodically, packing my clothes, my books, my design equipment. I left everything he had ever given me on the dining table. The jewelry, the photos, the silly souvenirs. I didn't want any of it. As I was packing up my desk, I saw the pathetic bouquet of roses Mark had brought to the meeting. The staff must have cleared them from the room, and a well-meaning manager probably put them with my things. They were already starting to wilt. I picked them up, walked them to the kitchen, and dropped them into the trash can. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? It's Carol. Her voice was no longer syrupy sweet. It was cold and brittle with rage. I hope you're happy, she spat. You've destroyed my family. I almost laughed. I didn't destroy your family, Carol. Your family was already a wreck. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see the mess. You are a vindictive, cruel woman, she continued, her voice rising. Mark loved you. He was trying to protect you. He was protecting his brother's criminal behavior and his father's reputation. I corrected her. He used my love and my trust to do it. That isn't protection, Carol. It's exploitation. And you encouraged it. You raised him to be a doormat for his brother. And you were perfectly happy for me to be the new floor he wiped his feet on. There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. She was speechless. You have my number, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I told you not to contact me. This is your one and only warning. If you or anyone in your family ever tries to speak to me again, my next call will be to a lawyer. Goodbye, Carol. I hung up and blocked the number. I felt a grim satisfaction. She had wanted to put me in my place, to make me feel guilty. It hadn't worked. I was immune to their manipulations now. Just as Sarah and I were carrying the last box out to her car, Mark appeared. He must have been waiting outside. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen, and he hadn't shaved. He stood in the doorway, blocking our path. Chloe, please, he said, his voice hoarse. Don't leave. We can go to counseling. I can change. I'll cut Leo off. I'll do whatever it takes. I stopped and looked at him. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound sense of pity. He still didn't get it. The time for that was 6 months ago, Mark, I said quietly. When your brother confessed to a felony and you decided to cover it up instead of telling him to face the consequences. Or maybe the time for that was when you decided to steal from my savings account. Or when you agreed to let your brother humiliate me at our wedding. You had so many chances to do the right thing, to be the man I thought you were. And you never took them. I was scared, he pleaded. I didn't know what to do. Yes, you did, I said. You knew exactly what to do. You chose the easy way out. You chose to protect them instead of protecting us. The problem, Mark, isn't that you made a mistake. It's that this is who you are. When things get hard, you lie. You cover up. You sacrifice your own integrity to keep the peace. I can't live like that. I won't. Sarah gently pushed past him with a box. He didn't move. He just stared at me, his face crumbling as he finally began to understand that this was really the end. There were no more chances, no more negotiations. I do love you, Chloe, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. I looked at him one last time, at the man who was supposed to be my future. The thing is, Mark, I said softly, I don't believe you. I walked past him and out the door, and I didn't look back. The aftermath was both messy and liberating. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a new apartment, a sunny little place that was all mine. It felt clean, unburdened by the ghosts of a life that almost was. I focused on my work, taking on new projects that excited me, and spent my evenings with Sarah and other friends who had rallied around me. I was building a new life, brick by brick. The story of our non-wedding, of course, became the stuff of legend among our social circle. The official version was that we had broken up over irreconcilable differences, but whispers of the real story, the one about Leo's dramatic entrance and the financial scandal, circulated widely. I never confirmed or denied them. I simply let the Millers stew in the ambiguity and suspicion they had brought upon themselves. I heard snippets of the fallout through the grapevine. A friend of a friend told me that David Miller's firm had lost 2 major clients. The other partners were apparently furious, and rumors were flying about financial irregularities. The lake house deposit might have been covered up, but the damage to their reputation was done. The trust was broken. Another friend told me she had seen Carol in the grocery store. She looked haggard and aged, and had apparently snapped at someone who offered her a polite hello. The queen bee of her social circle had been dethroned. The perfect family image she had worked so hard to maintain was shattered, and she didn't know how to cope. And Leo? I heard he had left town. No one knew where he went. He had burned his last bridge. Without Mark and David to constantly bail him out, he had no safety net. He was on his own for the first time in his life. As for Mark, he sent me a long, rambling email a month after I left. It was full of apologies, self-pity, and more promises to change. He said his life was falling apart. His father blamed him for not controlling me. His mother was a wreck. He was alone. He begged for one more chance to talk. I read the email, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even pity anymore. It was like reading a letter from a stranger. I typed a one-sentence reply. I wish you the best in dealing with the consequences of your own choices. Then I blocked his email address. A few months later, I took a trip. It wasn't the Italian honeymoon I had planned with Mark. It was a trip for me, by myself. I went to Portugal. I sat on sunny beaches, ate amazing food, and explored ancient castles. I didn't think about the Millers once. One afternoon, I was sitting at a seaside cafe, sketching in my notebook, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to ignore it, assuming it was one of them trying to get through on a new number. But curiosity got the better of me. It was from Ben, the waiter. Hi, Chloe. The message read. I don't know if you remember me. I heard through the grapevine what happened. I just wanted to say I'm glad you got out. And I thought you might like to know this. David Miller's firm is being audited. Officially. Someone tipped off the IRS about potential fraud. The whole house of cards is coming down. I stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across my face. I hadn't been the one to report them. My threat had been enough to get my money back. And I had been content to let them be consumed by the implosion of their own reputations. But someone else, perhaps the accountant they had fired years ago, or one of the partners Mark and David had tried to deceive, had taken that final step. Justice, it turned out, had a way of finding people. I typed back a simple reply. Thank you for letting me know, Ben. That's the best news I've had all year. I put my phone away and looked out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the shore, a steady, relentless rhythm. For so long, I had felt like I was drowning in someone else's chaos. Now, I was on solid ground. The wedding had cost me a fortune, and a future I thought I wanted. But as I sat there, completely at peace with a clear sky above me and my entire life ahead of me, a life that was truly my own, I knew it had been a bargain. The wedding was supposed to be the purchase of a partnership. Instead, it became the price of my emancipation. And I realized, with a clarity that was as bright and sharp as the sun on the water, that it was the best money I had ever spent. He thought he was getting a wife to complete his perfect family picture. He learned far too late that I was not part of the scenery. I was the one who would burn the whole set down when I discovered it was fake. And I would walk away from the ashes without a single regret.